As a mother of two lively boys, aged 7 and 12, I've always been keen on fostering their love for the great outdoors. Camping trips were our family tradition, a way to unplug from screens and immerse ourselves in the beauty of nature. Our recent escapade near Big Meadow in the heart of the wilderness was no exception. Little did I know that this camping trip would unfold as one of our most memorable and nerve-wracking experiences. The first night was, in a word, chaotic. Excitement bubbled within the boys as we pitched our tent beneath the starlit sky. Their enthusiasm, however, quickly turned into wide-eyed terror when the nocturnal symphony of animal nightlife commenced. The hoots of owls, rustling of leaves, and mysterious calls of the wild had my boys in tears, begging to go back home. Feeling like I was caught between a rock and a hard place, I decided to compromise for our second night in the woods. We opted for one of the small cabins nearby, hoping that the four walls would offer some comfort and respite from the eerie sounds of the forest. Morning broke, and as I stirred within the cabin's snug confines, I knew I had made the right choice. The boys were still asleep, their faces relaxed, unburdened by the night's fear. It was a refreshing change from the previous evening. But then, the serenity of the morning was shattered. I noticed that the boys were not in their bunks. Panic surged through me as I searched the cabin and found it empty. My heart raced as I sprinted outside, scanning the surroundings. It was a beautiful day with the sun casting a warm glow over everything, but my mind was racing with a mother's worst fears. My frantic search led me to a base of a towering pine tree nearby, where my boys stood, their tiny faces turned upwards in awe. My relief at finding them quickly gave way to a different kind of fear. Up high in the branches of the tree, nestled on a sturdy limb, were two bear cubs. They were adorable, no doubt, with their fuzzy coats and playful antics. But the sight sent shivers down my spine, for I knew that where there were cubs, there was inevitably a mother bear nearby. My boys were oblivious to the danger that lurked above them. They pointed and whispered in hushed excitement, while I felt like my heart might leap out of my chest. This was a parent's worst nightmare, and I couldn't help but imagine the horrific scenarios that could unfold if Mama Bear decided her cubs were in danger. Every ounce of my being screamed at me to rush in and grab my boys, but I knew that would be a grave mistake. I couldn't risk provoking the mother bear. So, I inched closer, my heart pounding, and began to softly call their names. "Boys, come down quietly. We need to leave the area." My youngest, wide-eyed and curious, started to climb down the tree, but the older one hesitated. He looked back at me with an innocent smile, believing that this was just another adventure. But I couldn't afford to let him stay up there any longer. I whispered with all the urgency I could muster, "Please, come down now, slowly." Thankfully, he relented, and with a nervous glance downward, he began to descend. As they reached the ground, I let out a silent sigh of relief. We retreated from the tree, my heart still racing, and made our way back to the safety of the cabin. It was a tense moment, but the real lessons were yet to come. As we huddled inside, trying to regain our composure, we were visited by a park ranger. She explained to my children why our encounter with the bear cubs was so perilous. The boys listened with wide eyes and took in every word. It was a stern but necessary lesson in the importance of keeping a safe distance from wild animals and not underestimating the dangers of the wilderness. What struck me most was how the ranger's words resonated with my boys. They realized that my overprotectiveness wasn't without reason. It wasn't about spoiling their fun, it was about ensuring their safety. The realization was sobering, but it was a lesson they would carry with them throughout their lives. Our camping adventure had one more unsettling chapter left to reveal. As we continued our stay in the area, we crossed paths with other campers who, to our shock and dismay, were engaging in behavior that was not only reckless but also cruel. One incident hit us particularly hard. A group of adults was attracting a deer by offering it food, only to beat it to death with a bat. The sheer brutality and lack of respect for the wildlife left us horrified. We were compelled to witness this gruesome act of cruelty from a distance, and it was a haunting memory that we carried with us. As we departed from our camping trip, we couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling that people could pose a greater threat to the tranquility of the wilderness than the wild animals themselves. It was a somber lesson that we shared with our children for years to come, the importance of respecting nature and its inhabitants, as well as the stark reality that humans could be the ones to fear in the wild. Our camping adventure near Big Meadow had been a roller coaster of emotions, from fear and panic to invaluable lessons in wildlife safety and human behavior. It was a journey that would forever remind us that nature is to be revered, not tamed, and that the lessons learned in the wilderness extend far beyond the campfire and into the depths of our hearts. As the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Idaho mountains, my buddy and I found ourselves far from civilization, nestled deep in the backwoods. The nearest town, a mere blip on the map, boasted a population of about 600 and was an hour's drive away. We'd chosen this spot for its isolation, intending to enjoy a night of camping beneath the starry sky and some target shooting the next day. Setting up camp had been a breeze. By 7 p.m., we had our tents pitched and a crackling fire going. The sizzle of hot dogs on skewers and the scent of the forest filled the air. We were in high spirits, relishing the solitude and the feeling of being disconnected from the hustle and bustle of daily life. As the sun's final rays faded, we sat around the fire, swapping stories and savoring the simple pleasures of camping. Our laughter echoed through the woods, and the warm glow of the fire pushed back the encroaching darkness. We snacked on Cheetos and other treats, soaking in the tranquility. But then, as if summoned by the gathering night, we heard it, a rustling sound, faint at first, from somewhere up the mountain. It was the unmistakable sound of branches cracking and underbrush being disturbed. My buddy and I exchanged glances, the mirth from a moment ago vanishing like a wisp of smoke. We fell silent, straining our ears to catch the source of the noise. The rustling continued, each step closer than the last. It was as though something, or someone, was making its way down the mountainside toward our camp. Doubt and unease hung in the air like a dense fog. We'd both brought firearms with us, mostly for the target shooting planned for the next day. Now, they felt more like reassuring companions than inanimate objects. We cautiously kept an eye on the direction of the approaching sound, but as soon as we stopped talking, the rustling ceased, as if the very forest held its breath in anticipation. This eerie pattern repeated itself several times. We'd start chatting, feeling a little more at ease, and then, with unsettling predictability, the rustling would resume, each time closer and more distinct. We'd fall silent, and it would vanish, leaving us in a disconcerting silence punctuated only by the crackling fire. The night deepened, the darkness becoming impenetrable, and our anxiety grew. Whatever was out there seemed to have an uncanny awareness of our presence, stopping whenever we did, as if it were listening to our every word. We considered the possibility of wildlife, perhaps an elk or a bear. But the eerie synchronicity with our conversation, the deliberate advance toward our camp, and the unnatural stillness when we fell silent unsettled us. This was no ordinary encounter with wildlife. The tension reached its zenith when, after one final advance, we heard the rustling just a couple of 100 feet away, shrouded in the pitch-black night. It was close enough that our instinct screamed at us to act. In a swift, adrenaline-fueled movement, I retrieved my rifle from the truck. Without hesitation, I aimed it into the air and squeezed the trigger. The deafening gunshot tore through the stillness, a blaze of light in the inky darkness. And then, all hell broke loose. Whatever or whoever had been lurking in the shadows decided it had had enough. In a feat of supernatural swiftness, it bolted up the mountainside with breathtaking speed. In the span of mere seconds, it covered a distance of at least 400 feet, disappearing into the wilderness faster than I could blink. It was as if it defied the laws of nature, moving with a grace and velocity that no human or known animal could match. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I stared into the inky void left in its wake. My buddy and I exchanged bewildered glances, our faces illuminated by the dying embers of the fire. What had we just witnessed? We never found the answer to that question. The forest remained silent, and the night returned to its normal, hushed state. But the air was thick with an inexplicable tension that hung over our campsite, casting a pall over the remaining hours of darkness. We spent the rest of the night huddled around the fire, our rifles close at hand. With each passing hour, our unease slowly ebbed away, replaced by a quiet resolve never to return to this remote corner of the Idaho wilderness. As the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, we packed up our camp with a sense of urgency, eager to leave behind the mystery that had unfolded in the shadows of the night. We may never know the true nature of what we encountered, but one thing was certain: we had ventured into a realm where the line between the natural and the inexplicable blurred, leaving us with a story that would haunt our campfire tales for years to come. Backpacking deep into the rugged wilderness of the Bighorns in Wyoming, my wife, a close friend, and I embarked on an adventure that promised solitude and breathtaking natural beauty. Our journey had taken us approximately 8 miles from civilization, and we found ourselves at a secluded little lake, with no other humans in sight for miles around. The ruggedness and remoteness of the area had a unique allure, but it also meant that we were on our own, far away from the conveniences of modern life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a cascade of oranges and purples across the expansive sky, we set up camp near the pristine lake. We marveled at the vastness of the starry canvas above us, a sight that city dwellers rarely have the privilege to witness. A warm campfire flickered, offering both warmth and a sense of security in the chilly mountain air. With the day's journey behind us and the anticipation of new adventures in the days to come, we soon retired to our sleeping bags inside our sturdy tents. The night was serene, and the only sounds that reached our ears were the occasional rustling of leaves in the gentle mountain breeze and the distant hooting of an owl. But then, in the early hours of the morning, a deafening noise shattered the tranquil atmosphere. It was a thunderous sound, like a freight truck hurtling through the forest at breakneck speed. My heart raced, and a jolt of fear shot through me. In the inky darkness, I tried to make sense of it, but it defied logic. There couldn't possibly be a truck out here, miles from the nearest road. I held my breath, straining to hear more clearly. The noise persisted for what felt like an eternity but was likely only a few seconds. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ceased, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. My mind raced, and my senses were on high alert. What could possibly have created such a deafening commotion in this remote wilderness? I remained still, my heart pounding in my chest, for what seemed like an eternity. The forest returned to its nocturnal symphony, the hushed murmur of the wind through the trees, the distant howl of a coyote, and the chorus of unseen creatures. Time passed, though it felt like an eternity, and eventually, I mustered the courage to unzip my tent slightly and peek outside. The night was still, shrouded in darkness. My headlamp revealed little more than the immediate vicinity, and I hesitated to venture out further into the unknown. Another half-hour passed, with no further disturbances. The wilderness resumed its peaceful lullaby, and my fear began to subside. Perhaps it had been a vivid dream or a figment of my imagination magnified by the silence of the mountain morning. With a newfound sense of security, I decided to investigate. I unzipped my tent fully and stepped outside, careful not to disturb my wife and friend, who were still fast asleep in their tents. The first light of dawn was just beginning to illuminate the landscape. As I cautiously approached the source of the mysterious noise, my senses sharpened. The crisp mountain air carried an earthy scent, and my boots crunched softly on the forest floor. I proceeded with caution, my headlamp casting a weak beam in front of me. Then, I stumbled upon an astonishing sight. At the edge of the lake, knee-deep in the clear water, stood a majestic moose, a massive cow, and her adorable calf. The mother moose gracefully bent her head to sip water from the tranquil lake, while her calf playfully frolicked nearby. Relief washed over me as I realized the truth. The thunderous noise that had jarred me from my sleep had been caused by these gentle giants of the wilderness. They were likely strolling through the dense underbrush before casually wading into the lake for their morning refreshment. The sheer quiet of the mountain morning had distorted their movements, magnifying every sound. What must have been a leisurely morning ritual for the moose had transformed into a symphony of nature, echoing through the stillness of the bighorns and sending my imagination into overdrive. As I watched in awe, I couldn't help but marvel at the unexpected beauty of this encounter. The mother moose and her calf exuded a wild, untamed grace, their presence a reminder of the incredible diversity of life that thrived in this remote corner of the world. I stood there, a mere spectator in their world, as the sun began its ascent, casting a warm, golden glow upon the lake and its unusual inhabitants. Time seemed to stand still as I observed the moose, appreciating their quiet majesty and the unspoiled wilderness that surrounded us. My wife and friend soon stirred from their slumber, drawn by my hushed excitement. Silently, I gestured for them to join me. As they emerged from their tents, bleary-eyed and curious, I pointed towards the lake. Their expressions mirrored my own sense of wonder and awe. We sat together, perched on the edge of the wilderness, watching the moose as they continued their morning ritual. The world around us came alive with the beauty of nature, and the fears of the night faded into the background. We had been granted a rare and unexpected glimpse into the secrets of the bighorns, a moment that would forever be etched in our memories. With the moose as our silent companions, we prepared breakfast, savoring the solitude of the moment. Our adventure in the rugged bighorns had taken an unexpected turn, reminding us of the unpredictable and captivating nature of the wilderness. As we shared stories and laughter, we knew that this encounter with the moose was a gift, a reminder of the remarkable experiences that awaited those willing to venture into the heart of nature's grandeur. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, the moose eventually retreated into the forest, disappearing as silently as they had arrived. We packed up our camp with a renewed sense of gratitude for the untamed beauty of the bighorns, knowing that we had been touched by the magic of the wild in a way that few ever experience. With memories of the moose and the mysterious night still fresh in our minds, we continued our journey deeper into the wilderness, eager to explore the secrets that this rugged and remote land held. The bighorns had shown us their wild and unpredictable side, and we embraced it, knowing that every twist and turn of our adventure would be a testament to the untamed spirit of nature.